Hey Peach, I'm watching your video response to Thunderfoot. I'm not really interested in the Thunderfoot video. I just wanted to kind of push you around a little bit on something you said in your video. In your video you mentioned that it's some police officers have even been known to blame victims of rape for their being raped. Now, I don't know every police officer, and of all the police officers I know, I don't know every word they've ever spoken. But what I can tell you is I've worked with hundreds of officers from dozens of agencies across the United States, from California to Virginia, Florida to Washington. And I have never heard a single police officer blame a victim of a rape for being raped. So, you've said that some are. Now, as a matter of logic, if you have one example of a thing, you can say that you have some of it. But I take what you mean to say, something to be something more than just one police officer out there who, once upon a time, said it. I take it to mean something that's a much stronger claim than that, and that there is a significant proportion of police officers throughout the land who are blaming rape victims for their being raped. So, I would like to ask you to please, if you can, give me the exact quote from one of these officers, or two or three of them, and exactly who they are. The reason I say this is because I know it's publicized in the media a lot, and on like the petition organization websites, about how this is victim blaming, that's victim blaming. I would like to know, in addition to what exactly these several police officers have said and who they are, what you mean by the term victim blaming. What I have heard quite a lot of is officers explaining risk assessment to people. And if you have, just to make a crystal clear example, 24,999 people come in who've been raped, and you notice they're all wearing pink shirts. And then there's one person at the end who's been raped, and he or she's wearing a black shirt. You notice a pattern. You say, gee, you know, most of these things have one element in common. Maybe the element that they have in common is something we should talk to people about, so they can recognize what is a common trend throughout the rapes that we investigate, and put the community on notice. Hey, in case you were wondering, our local rapists seem to like people wearing pink shirts. In the future, you might want to avoid wearing pink shirts. It seems to dramatically increase your chances of being raped. But to say something, even if you had that level of evidence, which I fully grant you don't get, it's not that, unfortunately, you can't find an element quite that common. But even to say that to these people who are victim blaming, the victim blaming crying crowd, to even say that is to blame a person for his or her own rape. It's nothing of the like. It is just pointing out there are certain actions you can take, certain things that are true, that if they happen to model how you operate in your life, they, more than other factors, dramatically increase your risk. We do this in every other field of law enforcement without objection. For instance, car thefts tend to go in trends. Certain models of certain cars, and even somewhat to the color of the cars being stolen. So if you happen to notice that Acuras, red Acuras in your neighborhood, are being stolen, and you own a red Acura, from that you can deduce that your risk has increased, because that is the most prominent flavor of car being stolen in that particular area. Now, that doesn't make it your fault that that the community of evil people have decided that that's the thing they're into at this particular time, but nevertheless, you can't get away from the fact that that is, in fact, what they are after, and you have it. That increases your risk. It's not to say, because cars are super duper expensive, I mean, oh, don't go out and buy a new car, because most people can't afford that. But if it's just the pink shirt, well, you could wear blue, you could wear yellow. And the reason I put it like this is because I grow very tired of seeing rape help, the people who want to help rape victims and potential rape victims, holding up signs, spouting nonsensical claims like, I need XYZ because at my freshman indoctrination class or orientation class at my university, they taught us how to avoid circumstances that increase our risk factors for rape, rather than just telling men to stop raping. I have excellent news for that crowd of people. The message is out there that rape is not acceptable. I have some unfortunate news for them too. Rapists don't seem to care. You cannot fix the problem just by spouting platitudes. Don't rape! Don't rape! if this were an effective strategy at mitigating risk, then one has to wonder why it does not work in any other realm of criminal activity. It doesn't stop wars, it doesn't stop murder, it doesn't stop kidnapping, it doesn't stop burglary, it doesn't stop car theft, and it does not stop rape. Now, I'm not saying that you are spouting that. I'm saying that, and I know Thunderfoot happens to have this view too, with a lot of other people, that's what is commonly being thrown out, nonsensical statements like that. And people like myself respond by pointing out there are risk factors. Take smoking. Just because you smoke does not mean you deserve to get cancer. However, you can't ignore the fact that it increases your risk for getting cancer. It is not cancer victim blaming to point out, oh, you were a smoker for 25 years. Okay, now we're starting to understand the situation. Rape is a very emotional issue for a lot of people. It's very difficult to deal with, both as a victim and as law enforcement investigating it. But I can promise you, in the main, police officers really like catching rapists. Unfortunately, if you are a rape victim and you go talk to the police, you will have a long series of very difficult, very personal, very probing, very uncomfortable questions to answer. The police aren't asking you that because they're really super bored and they want to find out about your life. They're asking you this because knowing something about the victim lets you get a portrait, in some small degree, about the perpetrator. And if your goal is to catch a perpetrator, it's very much more useful to know something about that perpetrator than to not. And we apply this in every other domain in law enforcement. Rape victims, I'm sorry it's uncomfortable, but if your goal is to get a rapist off the street and have that person convicted, you have to understand that these questions must be asked. And if you don't want to answer them, that's fine. You don't have to. You just have to accept that if you refuse to go through this, you make the job of law enforcement much more difficult, which directly translates into law enforcement having a much lower success rate at catching these rapists who, I iterate, don't care about your little slogans saying, don't rape. Go to a prison, talk to rapists. They are aware now that rape is wrong. They were aware when they were convicted that it was wrong. They were aware when they were arrested that it was wrong. And they were aware when they were raping their victims that it was wrong. They just don't care. So I would appreciate from you, Peach, a precise explanation of what you mean by victim blaming, and some examples of some police officers who are going around blaming victims. That is to say, saying that the reason a person has been raped is their own fault. They were the cause of their own circumstances. There's a distinction between pointing out risk factors and saying if you have these it increases your chances, while simultaneously saying the fault for committing the bad action, the evil action, the unlawful action, is on the perpetrator of the crime. Nevertheless, if your goal is to remain unraped, you would be wise to make a reasonable assessment of your risk and take certain precautionary measures, reasonable precautionary measures, against it. And that is, in the main, what the message is from Thunderfoot's video, even though some of his examples are, well, the mountain lion, really? Anyway, so thank you, Peach. Have a great day.